Do we get reason from non-reason? And so I'm continuing the series today on evidence for God. We've been talking a lot about different subjects, and so this is going to be one that kind of goes part and parcel with that. As you get kind of dive into this debate, especially with atheists, they like to say things like, I just follow the evidence. I'm a rational person. I don't need God to explain reality. And so let's actually think about that. Let's digest that for a minute. Where does that ability come from? The ability to think logically, to weigh evidence, to follow the facts. Where does it even come from? Because if what atheists say is true and all that exists is just, matter in motion, right? Particles, physics, governed by the laws of chemistry, biology, then your thoughts aren't really based on truth. They're based on the firing of neurons, chemical reactions in your brain. You don't have any control over them. In other words, you're not reasoning, you're just reacting. Take for example, like a can of Coke, right? You pop it and it starts fizzing. You wouldn't pop a different can of Coke and say, well, that fizzing is true, and the can over here that's fizzing is false. They're just fizz. So if we're just matter in motion, then all of your thoughts, yours, mine, Richard Dawkins, they're nothing more than just chemical reactions. Are you following me? So if that's the case, why would we trust any of them, including the thought that atheism is true, right? Do you see the problem? To trust reason, you need a cause that is reasonable, a mind that produces minds. If we come from, well, if we came from non-reason, if the origin of everything is just some blind, mindless process, then why should we expect reason to show up anywhere? It would be like expecting a book to write itself without any author. Logic and truth, they come from minds, not molecules, right? We talked about it just recently. You can't weigh thought, right? So when someone says, I only believe in science, what they're really doing is trusting their reason to evaluate that science. But that very reason, it cannot be grounded in purely, like a materialistic worldview. They're borrowing from the theistic worldview, and they do that a lot. The only way reason makes sense is if there was an ultimate reason, a mind behind the universe. That's why John says in the beginning was the Logos, the reason, the word. That's God. If you think about it, atheism, it undercuts itself. It uses reason to deny the very foundation of reason. But the Christian worldview says, no, you're made in the image of a rational God. That's why you can think. That's why you can think logically. You can discover truth. You can argue. That the whole reason you can do that is because you're made in the image of a rational God that can do that. So the next time someone says, I don't need God to reason, ask them, well, how does reason come from non-reason? Because if we're just matter, if we're just particles, then so are our thoughts. And matter doesn't give you truth. Minds do. All right. And the ultimate mind is God. And that's where we get it from. So thanks for watching. Hope that made sense. I know it was a little bit deep, but if you watch this multiple times if you need to. God bless. Appreciate you watching, and I will see you back next time. Bye.